Shlama Amchun. This video is continuing on the idea of the four elements, looking at liturgical texts for one day, and it's probably one of half a dozen up to a dozen days of the year that get extremely philosophical. But this idea of the four elements, of the union of opposites as being crucial in our theology, it's a really emphasized point of especially Church of the East, but generally Syriac theology of the Assyrian faith. So I want to use this Sunday because the readings in it are really neat, and I think nicely illustrate this kind of cosmological way of seeing our creation. So let's look at a text from the Udra. It's from the Sunday for the fourth Sunday of Great Lent, and this is the Oni Tetqenke. It's the first hymn that's used in the Raza Kaddish in the Divine Liturgy, and we can go to the text right now. So right here, Tetqenke Bawiyat Shlama, that's the hymn. 2 psalm verses for the two choirs to repeat with, and the hymn itself. Vramza, in a symbol, in a indication, in a type, Vramza, a wadbriyatha, I'm sorry. He created creation kulla, all of it. Who did it? Ithya daqdam kul. Ithya means he who exists, the essence that is before all. Only God is Ithya. So for us, only God is an actual being. The rest of us are existences of His will. Only God exists in Himself. Only He is a real being. Everything else is a function of Him. So, my classic line is, we never bless human beings. We bless human creations and becomings. Huwaya wa Hebreya in Syriac, right? When the priest blesses, it's Huwaya wa Hebreya. Things that are being created and things that are becoming. Only God is Ithya. So, the Ithya daqdamkul, the before all things essence, Wawad Britha, created creation, Abramze, in his symbol, in his indication. Ulachma, notice it's feminine because it's Brita, and he made her a harmony. Besuret Taibute, in the greatness of his mercy. Dihi Bad, that she in her Telab Alaw would learn of him. Minna Auda Mitkhia Zianita, some of her he made visible. Na Takhreta, the other part, Mithyad Anitha, only intellectually perceivable. So that would mean only angels and humans can understand it. So that would be, let's say, sure, it would be things like angel and things like the four elements, but it would also be things like mammal, right? You've never actually met a mammal. You've met examples of things that we call mammal. But the idea of mammal, it's a truth, right? It's only an intellectual truth, though. And because it's intellectual truth, it's higher than, my pet golden retriever. It's even higher than dog. It's more abstract, but it's a true property. It's a genus, actually. And so God made those which are visible, so material particulars, things you can touch, and things that are only knowable, higher existences. Wasra likulla bi'warnasha atawdid khadubra. So, and God bound creation together to man in confession that khad'u bra, he is one, he who created her creation. Dawiyad khubbid nawda aliyate, that by his love he would confess on his iyate, on his existence, on his self, on his being. And then part 2 of this hymn, it's kind of a 3-part hymn. We have Shabach, it means glory. Allah Maratawa, God, the good master, Baruyid Alma, the creator of the universe. Brawa athqin. He created and he established athqin. Taibuthe, in his mercy or grace, is tukhse. So this is from Greek. It's a loan word. It means the element. Is tukhse. The word for elements. Is tukhse. Arba, 4. Created 4 elements. Nura, fire. Umayya, water. War'a, and earth. Am'ar, along with the air. Daw so zag is to mix. Daw in their mixture. Yawkhayyil kulbsar, he would give life to all flesh, right? All of us have our life. The universe exists because the opposites are mixed. You have the harmony and union of opposites. And Dawhun Shauda, that in them would be known Rabbuthe, his greatness, Khayle, his power, the power of his Khemtha, of his wisdom. Daw Sanqule, and in their opposites, Mqayyim Lawrita. So in the union of opposites, he has established creation. So continuing to the alam, to the last part. Let me pull it up. Make sure you can see it. There we go. Shabba, on Sunday, on the first day of the week. Yawma Rabba, the great day. Ithribe Nuhra, on that day he created the light. But Bathrin, on the second day, Raqi'a, which means the hard thing, the firmament, right? From Latin, meaning the hard thing. Raqi'a. Waltlatha, on the third day, Ilane, the trees, the holiness of all kind. Well, Arbab Shabba, and on the fourth day, on Wednesday, Brashim Shaw Sahra, the sun and the moon. B'chamshab Shabba, on the fifth day, on Thursday, Tayra, the bird, Parakhta, and the flyer, the flying thing. Wa'arutha, and on Friday, Gawl al-Adam, he, like a potter makes things. That's Gwal. We don't have this word in English. Gawl Adam. Waqra Ishme, and he called his name Salme, his own image. And he calls Adam's name my own image. Waqra Ishim Salme. Shabtha Etnich, on Sunday, he took rest. Maria min Amle, the Lord from his work. So this, of course, gets a lot deeper, and these hymns are not necessarily complicated ones. That's why he chose them. This Sunday has it's really nice, actually, that it doesn't have really complicated imagery tied into them. It works well, because you're supposed to have learned this kind of middle school and high school, and it sounds difficult, but once you get a symbolic structure, it becomes simple. I don't think it's actually a problem of learning symbolic structure that's difficult. It's unlearning our devoted materialism that makes us conceive of the world in completely materialistic ways, so that we have this death grip on materialism to the level where I will sit with someone and be describing how the less something happened in the real world, the more true it is. And I'm not talking about something like the law being given to Moses or Christ's resurrection. Those happened factually and truly. But when you're speaking of something whose meaning is tied into, it's the eternal truth factor. Example is Adam and Eve as God's idea of a human being. If you have Adam's bones somewhere in the desert, if he had a birthday in the same way that I had a birthday, if he's not still, if this isn't the eternal story told by God, then it's a fact of the past. It's not a truth within which all existence is just an instant, right? If it's what God understands man to be, his conception of man in the mind of God is Adam and Eve. I'm not talking about God created the male and female. End of chapter 1 Genesis, right? That's true. That's fact. That's clearly, Genesis 1 is an extremely scientific description, right? God gets the idea of heaven and earth, that's what it means to be heaven and earth, and then he creates the informing knowledge. Well, first, his Holy Spirit, it moves, and in its motion, it creates the Spirit, the air element, which condescends and creates the waters. You have the zone of possibility, the kind of chaotic nothingness out of which things can happen, into which God's light of knowledge shines. And all of this is from God. There's no pre-existing elements. And then the earth is created, and this is the idea of the earth element of molecular existence, time and space existence. And then only after that, and it is actually the sun and the moon and the stars made, day 4, right? So the first 3 days, there's no sun, moon, or stars. Obviously, they're not talking about physical light. They're not talking about planetary bodies having existed yet. They're not talking about something physical. But we have difficulty with that because we're materialists, right? And I include people who want to figure out extremely factual basis for these stories. It's not that I'm going to insist that they're not factual. I'm going to insist that they're true, and that they may have, because they're true, anything that's true constantly happens again and again, because it's truth, right? Tower of Babel, whether or not in Babylon they built the tower and God collapsed it, man creates towers of Babel, and sometimes our whole society creates them, and then they collapse. I think a lot of us are wondering if that's what we're going through right now. This kind of Tower of Babel of modernism and materialism just collapsing. Probably. That's a truth, and since it's a truth, probably in Babylon, towers of Babel collapsed. And they did in Rome, and they're going to on us, and they did in all sorts of societies and families, and there's mega levels of that. So truth is symbolic because it's eternal and it causes the physical world, right? Something's not really a cause unless it's not factual. It's true, right? What is the cause of man can't have a specific eye color. It has to have the cause of men having eye color. And that's what we're talking about here. The cause of multiplicity in the universe being the union of God, being God as the cause of all, God as the one who breathes life into it. And his breath of life, there's a diversity that it reaches out into, but because it's all his breath, it comes back in a unity. So I hope this is helpful. I'm going to continue going on with Genesis, and this is to kind of dovetail with that. God bless, subscribe, hit notifications, put commentary. Thank you, Mshicha. Warchun B'Sheina.